Voices of Change is to connect, inform, and empower people to engage in social political change. Right here on USALA Radio. World news, local politics, saving money and investing, all this and more right here on USALA Radio. Your voice, your radio.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Voices of Change on USALA Radio. Good morning, Aissia.
Good morning, Leslie.
How are you today?
Great. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was awesome. How about yours?
Great. It was awesome as well.
It's very cold today.
Today is a cold day.
My.
It's winter. It's definitely winter
It's
here.
definitely winter. Yeah. I don't know. It's maybe some snow in the future.
Yeah, that's what the weather is saying. You know, it was kind of cold rain last night. So it's definitely winter's here.
Definitely winter is here.
Yeah.
We're going to have an interesting conversation today, as we always do.
We do. It's always great getting together with you on Saturday morning to talk about politics.
I love the politics stuff because you come up with really good topics. You make me do the... You put my thinking caps on.
Yeah, you do. You do the research. I sort of just go through the news and just sort of look and see what's a hot topic.
Yeah, but you do your research too, and I love it because you're a wealth of information and knowledge, and that's a good thing to have here, so that we can get this out and this information out to the people. That's very important.
It is.
So today we're going to talk about two topics.
Yes.
One, the first that we're going to delve into is the CBAs.
Yes.
And those are, it's called community benefits
agreements.
With the community, and we're going to get into that in a minute. And we're also going to talk about the amendment that Martina White passed in the House. It actually passed in the House and the Senate and signed by the governor, which limits the power of Krasner to prosecute cases here locally when it comes to firearms here in the city of Philadelphia, and how this bill got under the nose of the Democrats here in Philadelphia, and they signed on to it, and now they're saying they didn't know what they were signing on to or voted for. But we'll get into that in just a minute. But let's get into this issue of the benefits agreements, the community benefit agreements. I'm calling or titling this show today, "The Needle in the Haystack."
Yes.
Aissia.
Yes.
Now, we all know so exactly how would you go about finding a needle in a haystack, right? Let's get into that first. Well, number one, eliminate the haystack.
Right. Well.
Number two, rummage from the needle manually. Number three, you locate the general area of the needle. And number four, you extract the needle automatically. Mm-hmm. So in regards to the community benefits agreement, I call this a needle in the haystack because it's a complicated issue. Mm-hmm. Two, we know that December 4th, City Council brought this up for a vote to address this issue.
Right.
And there's mixed feelings about this, Aissia.
Well, so, going back to when the registered community organizations were created by the Planning Commission, back when zoning matters was happening and the zoning code was changing in Philadelphia, the Planning Commission created the registered community organizations to bring some transparency and accountability in the zoning process and make sure that folks who were near neighbors where some developer needed a zoning variance would be able to have a say in that zoning. In the past, it was basically just City Council and their staff who were making recommendations about zoning, and that brought the rampant development that had been happening in the area where Temple University is, also in the area where the Latino community is along the America Street corridor, and also in Northern Liberties, right? So we're in this crisis now in terms of affordable housing because so much market rate housing has been going up. The 10-year tax abatement was being put in place. So you got these people moving into the city or moving into, $500,000 homes, sitting next to homes worth $40 million. So everybody's taxes started going up except for those folks who were able to take advantage of the 10-year tax abatement, and it started pushing people out of their properties. So this concept of the community benefit agreement, I think, is a good one in terms of having the registered community organizations be transparent and accountable as
Right.
well, because there are some that are taking money from developers to do harm to the community. So with a community benefit agreement, you can lay out some standard things that you want to see supported. Like you can say, I want the Waterloo Playground toy drive supported every year. I want a book bag drive supported at Luis Munoz Marin, supported every year.
Right.
You can, as a community organization, as a community organization, you can then say to a developer that's coming into the city or a developer that's already here that these are the things that you feel are important and these are the things that you want to support. The problem is that everybody has to be on the same page.
And that's the issue, that
Right.
everybody's not always on the same page. So let's explain a little bit. Let's identify what that is, what the CBA is. Development. These are development projects, right? And are often subsidized by taxpayer dollars.
In the tune of millions of dollars.
Right? So they're subsidized by taxpayer dollars through tax abatement, which is a big issue here. We
Yeah.
talked about this. I
Yeah.
talked about this with Drew Murray here the other day. Grants are other incentives that they get and require government approval of zoning,
Yes.
changing the variances, what you just talked about. And it's not guaranteed that these projects will benefit the community at all.
No.
Okay, so
No.
that's why those agreements are so important.
Yes.
And the bill that was voted in City Council was to mandate
Yeah.
for those agreements to exist and for something to be given in exchange.
Yes.
Companies can rely on out-of-town contractors and workers to get the work done. Therefore, they're not mandated to hire people locally to do the job. And we have issues with unemployment, especially in poor communities in
Yes.
district like the 7th District, like the
Yes.
197, like
Yeah.
the 180.
Yeah.
So we have issues of unemployment in those areas. So CBA is a concept that's been around about 15 years now. Something fairly new, but it's
It
been
is.
around. So it came to kind of like revolutionize the land use approval process for large public-private economic development projects. So these are large projects that we're talking about. They're
Right.
not small. They're
No.
large and they make a
Exactly.
lot of money.
Yes, they do.
They make a lot of money. The CBAs are legally, it's like a legally binding agreement.
contract.
It's a contract that ensures specific benefits to a community. These often includes jobs,
Yes.
housing,
Yes.
and other economic opportunity. If that is the case, Aissia, and this is the purpose of these CBAs, how come our housing, we have a huge housing crisis in the city of Philadelphia. We still have unemployment rate high in low wealth communities, like I just mentioned. So if we're incentivizing these folks to come in and to develop and to have these big projects, how come the people that should be benefiting are not benefiting from this?
Well, I think that this issue of the community benefit agreements, so I believe that regardless of the size of the project, there should be a community benefit agreement. Even if it's a small project, there should be some kind of support back to the community. I'm not saying enrich the registered community organizations, because the registered community organizations are they meet to talk about community benefit. But I am saying that if someone is doing a community cleanup and needs to get food for get pizza for their volunteers, then yeah, the developer should then kick in some resources for that. Some like pay for the pizza. I mean, come on. But there are large projects like the Leah Cora Center. When that first started with Temple University, there was a community benefit agreement with that too. And so Temple needs to be held accountable for the commitments that they made in terms of scholarships for children in the zip codes where Temple has an impact, particularly where the university is. And there are scholarships that are available. The issue is that people are not accessing them. They are available. We just need to make sure that folks who want to go to school and live in the zip codes that it impacts, 19121, 19133, 19132, there's about 5 or 6 zip codes that are that students who are from Philadelphia that want to go to Temple in North Philly can get access to scholarship programs. So the issue is this needle in the haystack, which to me translates into accountability and transparency. Because what is a needle in a haystack? Something hidden.
Something hidden that you can't find.
Right.
Right? And you have to search for it. So here's my question. City Council voted on this December the 4th, right?
Yeah.
They voted on this bill to mandate these negotiations to occur. We all know, Aissia, you know this, that these developers, they put a lot of money, they pump a lot of money, and they give a lot of money to these politicians. We also know that a lot of people have lost their seats as a result of these developments in certain communities where they've, because of the tax abatement, because of all this booming property that is being built here in the city of Philadelphia. The other side of the argument is saying that brings that flows the economy, that creates jobs here in the city. If we limit the tax abatement, which we know there's another bill, there's another fight in city council and strategy to eliminate the tax abatement, that's going to affect the growth, the economic growth here in the city of Philadelphia. Do you think that is the case? Or
No.
you think there should be a mix, a use of this?
I think that there should be a mixed use. I don't think that. So here's the issue. The issue is that people who live in the city are not opposed to progress. They just want to be a part of it. No one wants to be pushed out of their home. The problem with our rents are going up, and so are the taxes, particularly in low wealth communities. So, but the problem is that these 10-year tax abatements, we are subsidizing these developers. We are subsidizing people.
Poor people
are paying to subsidize people who have the ability to pay but are not. So I don't think that I think that there needs to be something that puts a halt on some of this development that's pushing people out of their neighborhoods. Along North Broad, in the 2200 block of North Broad, where the Uptown Theater is, there is no vacant buildings. I mean, all this infill is happening. There's hardly any vacancies on that block, and there were vacancies for like 2 decades. There were vacant lots, but now there has been all of this infill and building, and the neighborhood is rapidly changing. And because, for 2 reasons, Center City doesn't have any place to expand north, and neither does Chinatown. And the Asian population is growing, and it's pushing further into North Philadelphia. And again, no one is opposed to development, but people want to be a part of their neighborhood. They still want to be able to age in place, and they still want to be able to access the resources
in their own
community.
We have to take a short break. Hold on to that thought. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio. We'll be right back.
If you love them enough to suck the snot out of their nose at 4 a.m., then surely you'll check nhtsa.gov/the right seat to make sure they're in the right car seat.
Being prepared is a part of who you are, but it's especially important in the case of a disaster. Be informed about possible emergencies in your area. Make a plan that covers where you go in an emergency. Build a kit with the things you need to survive. There's no one more capable of planning for your situation than you. Start your plan today. Go to ready.gov/myplan.
Listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio with your host, Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta. Aissia, we're having this conversation about the CBA's community agreements that are currently happening, these benefit agreements that are happening in our community, all this development, big projects, not only developments of housing, but also of big projects in different parts of the community. There's a big one right now in South Philadelphia going on. Actually, two of those projects that are under the community benefits agreement, and there's been some pushback in regards to those two particular developments because the agreements are not spelled out how the community will benefit from this, and there's been some pushback. City Council has to act on this. They're acting because they see that the people, number one, are given pushback. Number two, politicians are losing their seats as a result of not doing what they're supposed to do and not protecting the people and not really looking out for the best interest of the people that voted them into office. So this is having a true detrimental effect on people's political careers if you're not doing the right thing and protecting the interest of the people.
You always say it's all about the numbers.
It's all about the numbers. So the title of the show is The Needle in the Haystack, right? Mm-hmm. We're trying to find that needle in the haystack and trying to find a common ground solution to these CBAs. As you said, it's good. It's not bad. It's a good thing if we're negotiating those agreements correctly. Right. Community benefits agreements campaign has become, I would say, Aissia, a commonplace nationwide as a way to address income inequality.
Yes.
In poor neighborhoods. A CBA is a contract, like as we mentioned, between the coalition of a community group and the folks that are developing these spaces. And so it's a good thing. Having an exchange like this or having a coalition of community and public and private projects is a good thing that can benefit overall the community. But there's some opposition to this in these projects here in the city of Philadelphia. The CBA movement has its roots in the early 2000s. As to give a historical context of this, with the efforts of community coalitions to secure living wages, local hiring of people that live here in the city, and green building requirements for low-income communities that traditionally have been left out of the development planning process for their own neighborhoods. While CBAs can be a valuable tool for the low-income community or low-wealth communities, facing development in their neighborhoods can also pose some concerns if you're pushing people out of their own community. Right. That can be a challenge in itself. Some of the criticism of the CBAs tends to focus on several things, Aissia. The number one issue is instances where coalitions are formed specifically to negotiate CBAs and may not be fully representative of differing viewpoints, inclusive or accountable. So that's one issue that you just talked about that can be prevalent and an issue. Number two, projects where local government is involved in the negotiation and execution of the agreement. These criticisms, however, are misguided, according to some people that criticize this process. Coalitions formed specifically to sign CBAs are not representative of the community, so you don't have people of the community sitting at the table and seeking out their interest. These agreements are signed with such groups should not be called CBAs. So there's a misguide in terms of who is sitting at the table and who is representing the community. Secondly, when government actors are running land use approval processes, which could include a CBA negotiation, an attempt to add government officials as parties to the agreement, the U.S. Constitution protects developers from the government setting certain conditions on the approvals being granted. So if you have the Constitution protecting some of these developers, they have some leeway there in what to do and how to form these agreements. So these are some of the criticisms, Aissia, in regards to the CBAs.
Right.
I think that we need to be more clear, more transparency.
Yeah.
We need to find that needle in the haystack so that people can feel comfortable with these types of development. in their communities. And absolutely, at the end of the day, the community should benefit from these CBAs.
Yeah, so there is a project that's right at Broad and Glenwood. It's going to be at the Amtrak station. It's a $500 million project.
Look at
It's
that.
a $500 million project.
How are we benefiting from
Well,
that?
there is a coalition of organizations that are negotiating with the developer in terms of creating a community benefit agreement. But I think that so one of the things that I think is important about large development projects, projects that are going to disrupt neighborhoods, is that there is constant communication with community members around what's going to be happening. B, that there be some commitment to, like you said, buy locally, hire locally, and also try and support the businesses that are in that immediate area, because they may be negatively impacted by closures, by construction. There's also the health risks, like if you have a project and there's going to be a lot of dust and you have children in daycare centers or schools, you want to make sure that there's dust mitigation. You want to make sure that there are reports to the community about asbestos and about anything that's going to be an environmental hazard. So I think that this issue around the community benefit agreements and those points that you made, these organizations or these developers that are coming in are anchor institutions, just like a Temple University is an anchor institution. They bring in lots of resources. The problem is that people cut these side deals and they say to the developer, well, you know what, you're building next to my house, I want you to fix my gate or build me a driveway. And that way, the developers I think that they probably do put a little money in, a little extra pad their budgets to make sure that they are taking care of people's tires who puncture because of nails and things. I mean, those are the kinds of things that developers do. The CBA codifies that.
Right.
The CBA says, you know what, if your tire, if you ran over a nail because of my construction, then you go to this organization and you say, this is what, I need you to help me do this, right? So there are ways for the developer to be protected, but also to make sure that there's no dark money in this. Like there's
always dark money on it.
I know, but the thing is that these projects that are coming into the city, particularly large projects, have the ability to be anchor institutions and change the economic development in that particular neighborhood for the better. Use women-owned caterers. We're
going to talk about that in a minute, but let me just say two things that I want to mention. One, how the unions they play a role in these developments. And two, are these jobs really getting to the community? Who are eating up these jobs of these? This has been a fight.
It has
remember the development on Allegheny, on 3rd and Allegheny?
Yeah.
We fought and we sat at the table with the developer.
Right, we did.
And we told that developer, we want jobs. You want a letter from us from Harrisburg to support this project.
Right.
We want jobs for local people because they were given 150 jobs, or there was 150 jobs available. But we were fighting and advocating for people to be hired locally.
Right.
And his response was, that's a hard task to accomplish.
Right.
And what remember the reason?
Go ahead.
Some part of the reason was that they had to subcontract out.
Yeah.
And two, when they do subcontract out, they didn't have a lot of Latino firms that they can go and give these jobs to because there's not enough here in the city of Philadelphia. And that was part of the argument that they couldn't hire and do these do this construction here hire locally, if you will.
And so the other thing we have to also make sure that when there are state dollars or municipal dollars put into a project, then it's prevailing wage and it's union.
That's
and
it.
So this issue around unions and around diversity is I think a big issue, which is why it's important to support the organizations like the Energy Coordinating Agency and the work that they're doing around doing training for people to be able to get into the construction trades, to be able to increase their earning potential and earn fair wages wages to support their families. So that issue around diversity in the building trades, I think, is something that still needs to be
and negotiated.
emphasized. Yeah.
This is it. This is an issue where the unions, they come in like mobs, and they demand these jobs, and these developers sometimes are held hostage, because if you're going to build and you're going to get money, whether it's state money or local money,
Right.
they want you to give certain amount of jobs to these union people.
Right.
And that becomes also a potential problem to hire outside of the union. You know that, and I know that.
Well,
those terms
yeah.
need to be negotiated.
Yeah, I mean, and so the alternative is that, you're going to get, your job's going to get shut down because the unions are going to start protesting you, and then you lose money, right? Because in a construction job, time is money. And I'm gonna push back against the issue around the unions, not because I'm a huge fan, but because this is a union town.
It is.
And
It is.
and unions created the work week.
Yeah.
Unions created the 8-hour work day. Unions got children out of child labor. However, I think this issue of diversity is something that the unions cannot continue to push back against, because we need to be able to, this pervasive violence is because people don't have options.
Well,
To the extent that they're not allowing people in is, what is your culpability in making sure that, folks can go back, and children, 108 children have been killed
in the city of Philadelphia. Look, you just mentioned something very important. Philadelphia is a union city.
It is.
Well, then the unions have to hire people that reflect that community.
That's true.
Okay? So the big unions here, like Local 98, we have the Painters Union, big unions here. They need to start hiring black and brown people into these unions. And that's not reflective of our community, Aisha. You know that, and I know that. They're not hiring people that live they're not hiring black and brown people. And if we're going to advocate for unions, we have to do a better job in hiring people that reflect the community that we are. Because 46% of the population that live in the city of Philadelphia are African Americans. And I don't think they even have 5% of that in those unions. So let's be honest about this. Let's switch the conversation here quickly of the RCOs. Can you explain what an RCO is, Aisha?
Sure. So we have just a little less than a minute left. So the Registered Community Organizations were created by the Planning Commission, and they are organizations that have to register with the city, have to prove that they are meeting on a regular basis. They get the zoning notices when there are zoning variances in a neighborhood, and then the city council person makes a decision about a coordinating RCO. And then those RCOs pull community members together based on the developer sending letters to near neighbors about zoning variances that are close to them. They meet, they vote, they hear community concerns, they negotiate with developers, and then they send letters of approval or denial to the zoning board.
Hold that thought. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta on Voices of Change. We'll be right back.
I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. And even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. I have a mentor, Maria, and she convinced me to continue my education. Just never judges. She's a true role model.
From the depths of my heart, I thank you, Maria, for being a friend and a beautiful person. No one receives a diploma alone, and I'm honored to share this moment with you. Thank you.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org.
Welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Aissia, on December the 4th, City Council advanced the bill that would make CBAs mandatory for certain developments here in the city of Philadelphia, which is a good thing.
Yes.
The bill approved by City Council will give developers no choice but to negotiate such local support if their development gets any city financial assistance or would impact neighborhood health, economy, and social fabric. So that's a good thing. City Council did move and advance this bill forward. Developer contributions directly to the community should include, I say, Aissia, the following things. I think if we're going to advance a bill like this and give CBAs the green light to go ahead and do these development with public money, taxpayer money, then there should be some things that should be in place as part of the negotiation and agreement of these CBAs. One of the things that I came up with, Aissia, that should be at the negotiating table should be local hiring, training, and living wages. That should be part of the conversation and the agreement when this is being drawn. A majority of employees hired for operations and at least 25% of all employees should and must be local residents from the community. So at least 25% of the people should be local residents and include the formerly convicted.
Yes.
In that process.
Yes.
Right. So
I agree.
that should be part of it. Currently unemployment or unemployed or underemployed, these employees must be paid living wages, defined, I would say, a living wage should be at here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. I think it's what, $10 an hour. Aissia, we're still at $7.25.
Right, and but we just the Senate just passed the bill to increase the minimum wage.
Okay, so we're at $7.25.
We're at
currently.
$7.25 currently,
All right.
but we're gonna slowly in the next couple of years get up to $9.25.
So it's going to be at $9.25. So
Yeah.
it should be a living wage,
Yeah.
for the people with benefits. So that, and it should reflect the index inflation.
Yes.
So if you're going to give people a living wage, it has to reflect the index inflation. Okay. Number 2, local procurement. A local procurement plan, I would say, should be negotiated in this bill, in which a majority of all needed goods and services for the development and operation of that project should be sourced locally and to the local businesses and minority-owned businesses owned by women. Owned by women. So if you're going to develop here and you're going to have a big project, a percentage of that should be negotiated in the procurement process to give that percentage to women that own businesses here in Philadelphia. Number 3, I would say greening the project. That's an important thing for the development. Incentivizing public transportation use, mitigating pollution, and ensure healthy indoor air pollution provided on reserved green spaces, accounting for 20% of that agreement. So if you're going to develop here, 20% of that agreement should go to quality indoor air quality, if you will, and ensure that there's healthy standards across the board. Number 4, I think we should have some technical assistance and mentoring as part of the negotiation. Have the developers to provide a mentoring and assistant program to small businesses near the project and encourage procurement opportunities. So if the developer is going to develop, have meetings in the community, offer some incentives to the local businesses in your community to be able to get part of the subcontracts to be part of that project. That should be negotiated in the CBA. And lastly, I would say community involvement. Other than your RCOs, other people or working groups of the community representative should assist with the implementation of that CBA. RCOs should be at the table. Address environmental concerns and facilitating ongoing dialogue with the developers. So I think all stakeholders should be at the table. And this is what I kind of came up with in terms of contributions directly to the community if we agree to give a development here in the city of Philadelphia. What say you, Aissia?
Yeah, I mean, I think that this concept of anchor institutions, particularly from a university perspective, because universities are always expanding, they're like living entities. they expand or they die, right? So, but this issue of a university or developers being anchor institutions, and not only supporting the businesses that are located near them, but helping to create worker-owned businesses that is feeding their institutions. Things like laundry services, things like payroll departments. I mean, things that are that can be locally sourced, but also
And
can
are
be
tangible.
are tangible, but are also worker owned from that neighborhood, so that you're keeping the resources that are being generated in that neighborhood
Yeah.
and you're building up that neighborhood to support conviviality, to support livability, to support living wages. So there are lots and lots of studies, lots and lots of academic research on how an anchor institution can help a neighborhood, a city thrive. And so if we can create that same kind of momentum with the community benefit agreements, then we can create neighborhoods that thrive. But again, this issue of transparency and accountability is important, because we have to work at this collectively, because it's not about getting your tire fixed or your backyard fence done or creating a garage for you. It's about making sure that there's a place for you to have coffee in the morning.
That's
There's
it.
a place for
That's
you to
it.
read a book. There's a place for you to get your laundry clean.
And have a clean space.
And have a clean.
So these high projects, they call them high impact development projects, these terms should be negotiated, and at the end of the day, it should benefit the community. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Let's talk about Luis Cortes, who is the CEO of Esperanza, another anchor institution
Exactly,
in the
yeah.
Latino community.
Yes.
Let me tell you something. He employs over 300 people from the community. Love him or hate him,
Right.
he's doing good in the community.
Well, there
and
you
he's
go.
giving back to the community.
There you go.
And so, and he has high impact projects that he has done through in the Latino community. I think every project should emulate that. That you are hiring from within, you are hiring locally, and that you're negotiating, and that those contracts should include people locally, and that you should give a part of that pie to our local businesses here. We have the 26 business corridor that is on the other side of Broad, the west side. Here on the east side, we have the 5th Street corridor,
Right.
all the way up from 5th and Lehigh, all the way up to 5th and the Boulevard.
Right.
So, there's businesses here that should be part of that conversation when these high impact projects are being done in our community, whether it's in a Black community or Latino community. That the community has to be at the table.
Yeah, and I agree. I mean, I think that these high impact projects that are coming in should be supporting green space in our neighborhoods.
And you're all about green
Right,
space.
I am all about green space. Should be supporting the schools in our neighborhoods. Should be supporting hiring and employment in our neighborhoods. I think that there are so many deficits in our communities, and we try our best to fill those deficits by doing turkey drives and book bag drives and coat drives and things like that. But I think that we do, people don't give enough credit for poor people supporting each other out of poverty. It really doesn't. However, it would be an extra added bonus if some of that can be sustained through the money that is coming out of our tax dollars, because with this Trump tax plan, I'm paying more money, and and the rich are not. So how are these developers who are coming in, who are getting wealthy, they're millionaires, they're getting wealthy off of our tax dollars? Yeah, we want some of that back. We deserve some of that back. And these community benefit agreements are a way to be able to codify the fact that, when a developer is coming in and they're getting a state redevelopment capital assistance grant, or they're getting tax credits, that means that we're paying for that. We're paying for it. So technically it's our money going to a developer. So some of that money is a bucket, Leslie. We're pouring into that bucket. That bucket needs to pour back out to us.
Let me say this. I don't understand for the life of me. And I don't even know if we have an answer to this. How is it possible that you have a first-class city like Philadelphia with all this development coming in, a booming economy in Philadelphia, and we have a 46% poverty rate in the city of Philadelphia? Explain this to me. It doesn't make any sense to me. I just cannot wrap this around my head. How is this possible? A first-class city with all the economy that and all the development that's going on. You see it all throughout this neighborhood here. And yet we still have people that don't have adequate housing. We have people living on paycheck to paycheck. People earning less than $26,000 a year with a family of 3. How is that possible?
You know,
Please explain this to somebody. I mean, somebody from city council, come on. Explain this to me. Philadelphia delegation, explain this thing to me, because I don't understand it.
It is complicated. I mean, I think it's also a reflection. This is a microcosm of this issue of income inequality. And there's a group called United for a Fair Economy. They used to do these great examples of how you build wealth, right? How you build wealth. And through home ownership is the best way.
You know
Education is the best way. And so I hear your frustration. It is incredibly frustrating. I never thought I could be a homeowner. I never thought I could own my own home. And you know, I was working in a low income job on welfare, you know, struggling day to day. And for the life of me, I cannot figure out how I was barely making it, Leslie. I was barely making it. And so 5 years ago, December 5th, when you open your office, that was my road out of when I started making an income that was a fair wage. That is when my family came out of poverty. So this issue of fair wage, and that's the reason why I'm so happy that the Senate passed the bill to raise the minimum wage. I mean, it's a start, but it's not nearly the answer. So the wage issue has been, and the housing has been increasing, and wages have been decreasing, and we're in a crisis.
Yeah, it's a major crisis. Look, we have to take a short break, but we'll be right back. You're listening to Aissia Richardson and Leslie Acosta on Voices of Change. We'll be right back.
$150 over $90.
180 over 111.
160 over 110. I had a stroke.
This is what high blood pressure looks like. You might not feel its symptoms, but the results from a stroke are far from invisible or silent. If you've come off your treatment plan, get back on it, or talk with your doctor to create an exercise, diet, and medication plan that works for you. Go to loweryourhbp.org.
If I would have followed a treatment plan, I would not be in this situation.
They call me Maxie, but I prefer tripod. I was your above-average four-legged homie, and then wham, bam, minivan. Some people pity me. Now that's lame. I still run, fetch, and swim. And the ladies love me. I'm the ultimate wingman. Just don't ask me to high five.
Welcome back. You are listening to Voices of Change on Usula Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Aissia, we have a couple minutes left, and the remaining 8 minutes that we have left, I want to talk about. We're going to switch gears here. We're going to switch gears from the needle in the haystack. Well, actually,
it is a needle.
House Bill 1614 is also a needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
You have Martina White, a Republican, who actually, she did this bill with Jared Solomon. They worked together on this bill. This bill was introduced in June and sought to pass concurrent jurisdiction and legislation that would have given, or that has given, the Attorney General Josh Shapiro the ability to prosecute cases involving the sale, purchase, or possession of an illegal gun. So Krasner at this point doesn't have a say because now you have the Attorney General as a result of this amendment that they can go ahead and prosecute cases in the Philadelphia County, and they don't need to confer with Krasner. This bill is called House Bill 1614. It was voted by a majority of Democrats in the House. The only two Democrats that did not vote for this bill was Mary Jo Daley and Dan Miller, both Democrats. They did not vote for this bill. And basically, they didn't vote for the bill because they said that the local attorney, a DA, didn't have control,
Right.
they didn't have control, and she had concerns, and that's why she voted against. So it restricted local authorities to do and to act. So she didn't vote on this. Yet you had the other ones, Democrats, 90 who voted for it. And out of the 90, 2 of them are attorneys from the city of Philadelphia and voted in favor of this bill. So this is an issue because now Krasner, they don't have to confer. And Governor Wolf signed this bill. What say you, Aissia?
I think that people are not reading the legislation. I think that the work of a legislator is hard. It's hard because a lot of legislation is coming at you. A lot of amendments are coming at you, and you know how much reading it involves, how much research it involves, and I think this is something that just got slid through. And so I think that sometimes, on the opposition, people count on that, and within the Democratic Party, people count on that as well. Like people aren't gonna do their research.
And here's the other thing: leadership is supposed to protect the delegation. Whether it's here in Philadelphia, whether it's a Southeast delegation, leadership has a role to protect delegation and to whip votes either for or against a specific legislation. I am sure Frank Dermody, who's from western side of Pennsylvania, knew exactly what was
area
in the
folks. They got the legislature locked down.
Okay, I'm pretty sure he knew what this amendment entailed. But guess what? Didn't say anything to the delegation. Probably didn't confer like they always do in Harrisburg and talk to the legislators, specifically if it affects Philadelphia. No one said anything. And the excuse of the other state reps were they didn't know what was in the bill. That there was a needle, they couldn't find it, right? And that's why they voted in favor, because they didn't understand the devil was in the details in this.
Right, exactly. And you know what? I mean, sometimes things are done. Particularly, I don't know what else was happening at that time. It could have been
the budget was being passed. At that time.
Yeah, right. So it's almost like somebody saying, red over there, red, and I'm gonna slide this yellow in, And so sometimes that's how strategically that's how things work in Harrisburg. That there are a lot of sort of like these red herrings thrown in that gets people, sort of diverted. But
and our walk encyclopedia left, which was Mark Cohen.
Yes.
If Mark Cohen would have been during this time, let me tell you, Mark Cohen would have found that needle in the haystack.
Yeah.
And let me just say this: this bill involving any offenses involving firearms, meaning that Krasner and his team no longer have sole discretion over how to handle those prosecutions. It allows Philadelphia police to work directly with the Attorney General, cutting Krasner's office out of the process. This is unbelievable. The move is seen as an attempt to rein in Krasner after he revolutionized the Philadelphia District Attorney's Office and fired more than 30 prosecutors who served under his previous predecessor. And many of those staffers who he fired are now working for the Attorney General Shapiro.
Yeah, so there seems to be a shifting back and forth of folks who work for the Attorney General's office and then work for the DA's office in Philadelphia and then go back and forth depending on who's in office. So there definitely is a both a public and a legislative fight between the Attorney General and the District Attorney. And in the middle, you have Philadelphia residents. So the Philadelphia voted Larry Krasner in. Philadelphia wanted to change. And so, but I think that we need to focus in on some of the things that the District Attorney's Office is doing, like the integrity unit, the integrity prosecution unit, looking at cases that people were exonerated, like several people were exonerated and they spent decades in jail. And those are the things that Philadelphia residents were most concerned about. And that was the corruption that had been occurring in the Attorney General's office, or in the District Attorney's office, which is why they wanted to change. So I think that there needs to be some kind of come to Jesus moment between the Attorney General and the district attorney,
And the
or the
FOP.
Attorney General is not going to go any much further.
No, and let me tell you, this was an early Christmas gift to the FOP, right? With this bill, and so at this time, it is what it is. Krasner, this new law means that if Krasner decides to exercise power to prosecute and not bring charges, the police can go directly to the Attorney General's office and pursue the case regardless of whether Krasner wants it or not.
We'll see whether it stands up.
It stands up, yeah. So that's what it is, folks. It is what it is, and that's what we're dealing with here in the city of Philadelphia.
Mm-hmm.
We have come to the conclusion of this segment. Aissia, thank you for being here today again. It's always a pleasure to have these
Always.
conversations with you. You are just a wealth of knowledge, and thank you for doing this every Saturday. You have a good day, and we'll see you next week. You're listening to Voices of Change on Usala Radio with your host, Leslie Acosta and Aissia Richardson. Hasta luego.